Evening and welcome to right. Today we're going to look at military lessons of recent conflicts. हाल ही में जैसे आप सब लोगों को पता है यूक्रेन और रशिया का लड़ाई जो है वो पिछले 2 साल से चल रहा है और गाजा में इजराइल और हमास का जो युद्ध है वो भी 8 महीने हो गया है, 9वां महीना शुरू होने वाला है। इस संदर्भ में इंडिया के लिए क्या सीख है, दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू नो। एंड टू डिस्कस ऑल दिस विद मी इज जनरल राकेश शर्मा। Sir, good evening and welcome to Gunnershot once again. So
Thank
happy to
you.
have you here.
Thank you, Shankar.
Thanks a lot, sir. मैं सबको बताना चाहता हूँ मैंने इनको क्यों बुलाया इधर। वैसे तो मिलिट्री लेसन्स इन युद्धों में हर एक आदमी निकाल सकता है। कोई बोल सकता है आर्टिलरी ज्यादा करो, कोई ये बोल सकता है ये ड्रोन का युद्ध है, ये बड़ा लेसन है। बट नो, देयर आर सर्टेन इम्पोर्टेंट लेसन्स which he has spelled out, and I found them attractive. And the day this article came out, and this is a NatStrat, his article on Ukraine-Russia war, military lessons for India, मैंने उनको बताया सर ये जो लेसन्स जो आपने बताया है इसके बारे में हमें चर्चा करने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि ये बहुत अहम लेसन्स है और ज्यादा नहीं है ये, और बड़ा सिंपल है, पर हर बार हम इनको नजरअंदाज कर देते हैं और कहीं ना कहीं पूरा देश मात खा जाता है इसके ऊपर। सो आई जस्ट एनकैप्सुलेटेड जो लेसन्स इन्होंने बताया, ये तो यही लेसन्स है और यही लेसन्स हम एक एक करके देखेंगे और इनका राय विल टेक हिज व्यू एंड डिस्कस कि हमें करना क्या चाहिए। सो थैंक्स अ लॉट and all yours now, and you can start from the top and how the whole thing आपका लेख है और आपके क्या विचार हैं। आई एम जस्ट मीडियम टू कन्वे टू एवरीवन।
Yeah, thank you, Shankar. I have been studying the war, and you see, many of times you take on lessons, but their relevance and how do we accept the lessons into our own armed forces is important. And just taking lessons has got no value at all. So I was trying to decipher as to what is ours. And if you permit, I'll start by the last lesson that you've added, the political military fusion, and we can discuss.
Sir, we must. Yeah, I think that's a very important lesson, and we'll start from there.
Now, the point I wish to raise is that inevitably the decision to go to war is political, and I'm not wanting to go back to Clausewitz having said this, but it is true for us also. Every decision to go to war is political in nature, and it depends on two major factors. One is the will, which is the intent of the politician to go to war, which can be full-hearted or half-hearted, and then the capacities that you have to prosecute a war, and also capacities to sustain a war. If these two things match up, the war could take place. Now, here also the issue of defining war. When we define war, we say violence, interstate, or state and a non-state actor. Uh, in my view, is that the terminology war is transiting itself. It is moving. It is moving in a way, and I'm not talking about gray zone alone, but I'm just saying it is transiting in a manner when you can achieve your aims without fighting a bullet. I would say that that is also a war. So, the definition of the word war requires redefining, and we need to get little more cautious of the fact what war is all about. Now, I draw from what you said about Ukraine. Look, when you started the war on that date, and you and me are students of warfare for a very long time, a history behind us, there was probably an aim laid down by the Russian hierarchy that we to capture Kiev, Sumy, Kharkiv, the areas up north, including Kiev, which was probably with the aim of having a regime change or whatever. In 40 days, they learned that that aim was unachievable. They couldn't do it. In, it started on 24th of February. By 5th of April, the forces which were employed in Kiev and Sumy and Kharkiv had withdrawn back. Why? Because the political aim was not achieved. The military could not achieve the political aim, which meant that there was a lack of integration at the thinking level between the political hierarchy and the military hierarchy. And then they revised their aims, and they have now subsequently, for last 2 years plus, have stuck down to the areas which are on the eastern side, which is largely the areas of Donbass and Kherson and Zaporizhia and all that. So the fact is that there is a political military dichotomy here. Do we carry this lesson home? Now, of course, you and me are students again of Indian warfare. In 1948, we could have gone to Muzaffarabad, but we couldn't. We were not allowed to go there, or we could have gone to Skadu, where, if you recollect, our troops were caught into a
There.
siege in a fort in Skadu, and we didn't go across to Skadu. Those people had to surrender after 8 months of siege in August 1948. Again, in 62, we did not use the Air Force. In 99, we said, okay, you can't use the Air Force across the border. We didn't want to extend the warfare beyond Kargil in 1999. In 1971, we had said, okay, Dhaka was not the aim of the war. Dhaka was incidental, or, we were able to achieve it. There is always seemingly a dichotomy in what the political hierarchy thinks and what the military thinks. In Op Prakram, you and me were senior officers, we were colonels in various places, and we saw Prakram. There was a lack of will. In 2008, nothing happened. 2008, we had all the right to go across. When the Pakistanis came to Mumbai, and Kasab happened, and we were hurt badly. We had all the right, so the will. So one is, in 2008, certainly we had the capacity to go in and do a strong action, because we were hurt and we had the capacity. And we have participated in exercises in 2004, 5, 6, 7 on the western borders, and the exercises were very realistic and fantastically done. We had the capacity. Who makes the military strategy is a question I ask you. Is military strategy the job of the military, or is military strategy the job of the political masters? That's the fusion I want to. And this question I ask myself: whose job it is? As a soldier, man in uniform, he said, "No, no, political strategy is my job." But the fact is that when war is joined, it is a political master which lays down the constraints of warfare. You can't do A, B, C, D. In Op Pavan, what the CNC writes, the General Dipender says that the orders given to him in Op Pavan were delightfully vague. He uses the word delightfully vague. That synergy. And a lot of people have spoken about an absent dialogue, and all those. The books have come out, absent dialogue. If we learn the same thing from Ukraine war, there is a dichotomy between what the politicians wanted and what the military capacities were available to achieve. And and an understanding of what the Ukrainian armed forces were all about, and how would the population react. There is where there is a gap here. That's the issue.
Okay. Yeah, I go with you, sir. But this is the problem of political military fusion or the political military diffusion is as historical as warfare.
True.
Every one of us who's been in uniform has always felt that the politicians never define what we are supposed to do, and the politicians never always come forth and in fact they don't state it, but they always say that the military doesn't give us a clear cut answer. It can't happen, and this is his history will, as you said, justifies this, because there is no way in a democratic system that the a politician can give very clear-cut answers, nor can the military give very clear-cut plans as to how to achieve a thing. And all this has to be actually evolved based on a situation, because many of the plans which we undertake and which we have to execute are situational. But the lesson which I want to put across, and probably which you also want to put across, is that greater interaction under normal conditions will give rise to better politico-military fusion. Uh, a more nuanced approach between uh, the political masters of a nation and the military will lead to positive outcomes. What I want to highlight here is that in India, we have a strange setup where the politico military fusion is underlined by the bureaucracy, or rather, it is hijacked by the bureaucracy. You see, if constitutionally, the politician is mandated to defend the integrity of the nation because that's his call, right?
Yeah.
He's selected for it, he's elected for it. And the army man is again constitutionally mandated to protect the integrity of the nation. After all, that's why we are commissioned. Here comes the bureaucrat, in our setup, who, to a large extent, in the garb of assisting both, hijacks the whole story in terms of capability building, in terms of execution of plans, in terms of conveying the plans from one to the other, because he is the conduit to do so. In other countries, the bureaucracy and the political hierarchy give orders to the, sorry, not the bureaucracy, sorry, the political hierarchy and the military hierarchy give orders for the bureaucracy to execute. But here we have something different. I would like you to comment on that because I think that's a major lesson which we have to derive from all these wars which we are analyzing.
So, Shankar, you rightly pointed out this issue. I'll say that look, I would like to prepare the armed forces for the next war, not for the last war. Now, when you prepare for next war, we have to require capabilities to fight the next war. When I say there is capabilities required, the capabilities have to be generated over a period of time. Capabilities relate to capabilities relate to uh, how the war will be prosecuted, how the adversary will prosecute a war. If we do not know how to prosecute the war, what capabilities are we generating? What kind of training are we doing at operational level to prosecute the next war if the political thought processes as to how the war will be prosecuted next one is being done? So we may be buying equipment which may not be so useful in the next war because that war cannot be prosecuted because the dichotomy between the politician uh, and the military hierarchy. So all the capability building and all the training that we do today has to be related to next war, and next war has to come out of the thought process of this political military fusion. That's the logic. Now, the point that you raise, I think 7 decades have passed, and we have. Sorry, I have a bad throat here.
No, no
A-
problems.
Age is telling now. Now, the political hierarchy is also come of age. Some of us who have gone across to various committees and presented issues, we find that the political people across are not raw. They know, they understand. It is not that it is well understood that they want to exercise it. That's why if the surgical strikes or the Balakot went, there was a knowledge of some capability which we could be executed. Now, at this juncture, when you have a clear delineation between the Department of Defense and the Department of Military Affairs, which didn't exist till 2 years ago. There's a delineation. Now we have a Department of Military Affairs where Department of Military Affairs is will be able to uh, uh, convey, and they have the power to access the political hierarchies to convey that there needs to be a better synergy so that we purchase the capability IC integrated capability development plan comes across in a manner which is required tomorrow. We have 2% of the defense budget, 2% of GDP is defense budget. That's not expanding beyond it. So it's not, it is that what we procure is what is required. It generates what capability, and that capability has to be put into training, and the training has to be ready for the next war. I think time is ripe for uh, when now we have a, we must thank President Z for waking us up in 2020. We have to be grateful to him. So if he is woken up and we know that there is a threat existing, that synergy comes automatically in the thought processes, that we need to have a synergy saying, okay, we expect this from the armed forces. For that, you require capability A. If Iran could launch 330 drones and missiles and ballistic missiles and cruise missiles to a target, and it required the services of Israel with all the three tiers that they have, or and UK and the US and Jordan to down all 300, and it was not probably feasible for the Israel, which is a very strong military, to do this. Well, we require this capability. Now that synergy, somebody has to say this is what is required. And I don't want to get into the issue of bureaucracy. When something goes haywire, the public will logically ask also, why didn't you prepare? It has happened in, where did the Iranians learn from? What they did, they learned from what the Russians are doing in the course of last 1 year. They were using long range artillery, they were using drones of various types, they were using missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic, all into one package and pushed across. Now the defensive systems can only work to an end. Don't we need to prepare for it now? If we say that no, the bureaucracy is not sanctioning, well, I think we will be missing the boat, and we need to be prepared seriously for what's happening in these two wars.
Yeah, I think you made a great point, sir, that we need to be prepared for the next war. And it's not the bureaucracy who's accountable, which means that hopefully when the new government comes in, they look at this issue de novo and build better politico-military fusion where the bureaucracy is the executive and accountable executive of these actions. But then fine, this is one great lesson, I think, which is the most underlying lesson which we have added later on.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk of this. You said war is not inevitable, but however, we have to expect it to happen. So if you could dilate on that aspect. And of course, yeah, we'll dilate on that and then we'll go one by one across everyone, each other,
So
the rest.
if we take a time, we put a clock back into 10 years ago, and if Iran had fired its 330 of these missiles, the kind of response that the United States and the Western countries would have given to Iran would have been devastating. It didn't happen this way. The Israelis responded in a very measured response, a very calculated response to control escalation. A war between Israel and Iran, which could have been inevitable after these firings 10 years ago, is not inevitable today, because the countries move towards well managed escalation control. How did they do it? The Iranians informed four countries that 72 hours hence we are going to do this kind of fire. They informed Jordan, they informed Turkey, they informed Iraq, and the missiles and all flew over these countries. So there is a deliberate attempt to show to the public we have taken action. But there was also a deliberate attempt to make sure that the United States get information from their allies like Turkey and Jordan, if not directly, that there is this thing going to come, so they could do protective mechanisms for this one. War is not inevitable because the countries are now seriously conscious of the fact that a war means many things. Firstly, the victory, the definition of victory is not guaranteed. You can't define victory today. It is one of the toughest terms is to define victory. And all of us who go back to a victory saying territory or destruction of force or regime change or destruction of military wherewithal, all this is not anymore victory. So victory not defined. So the wars are so messy that you don't know what victory. The wars are not inevitable by saying that there should be mechanism existing. We are soldiers. We are the last people who want to go to war. We have to prepare for it because we see the goriness of war in our times in life where we have seen so many times. So we are the last ones to talk war as a casual word. We go to war. It's not a casual issue. Here we have to prepare ourselves in a manner that there is make sure war is not inevitable. That's the point I wanted to raise. And I'll take the second issue here. When people write that India says that war can be protected by external balancing, now fancy terms being used that there is we'll get global support. There is you and me talk about Quad quite often, and we will have um external balancing that will deny a war. War is not inevitable, but it can happen. It has happened. There are 32 wars on today as per the Uppsala conflict index. 32 wars.
Yeah.
And there are many on the corner of it, like Venezuela and Guyana. They are just on the corner of. I mean, they're about to be tense times there. So the point is that when you have to fight a territorial war, we can bank on some support. But to say that you rely on the support, excessive support, that they will come and assist you, whether it's even maritime conflagration, I would say that it will be a fallacy. When we have to prosecute war, India as a nation, we have to prepare ourselves for it. It is not that you did to excessively rely on external balancing, which I don't think is the right way of preparing ourselves against a very strong and aspirational adversary we have up north.
So what in essence you're saying is you need to have the sheet anchor of your own defense. Anything which comes over and above that is a bonus.
Yeah,
And any extra capability or strength which we derive out of a partnership or external assistance just contributes to the greater cause, but the fundamentals we have to do on our own.
yeah,
The next point which you made, I think, which is a great point, is that economic interdependence does not guarantee peace, right? That's
yeah.
what you said. Reliance on economic interdependence with adversaries to decrease the chance of war is a major fallacy. I'll tee off before you say anything. The First World War, the economic interdependence between all the countries which were involved in the war was a very high order, but yet it happened. And it has repeated itself over and over and again. And it has repeated itself with us in with China also. So I think you need to elaborate why this thing happens and why economic interdependence is not a guarantor of peace.
So you gave a right example of First World War when Germany and UK and all the countries had excellent amount of economic interdependence, and still they went to war. And war went started with a not a very major issue. Now you see between Taiwan and China, between China and Japan, the trade superlative, excellent trade relationship between these countries. Still, The Chinese keep firing across here, across the Taiwan thing, because the matching of geopolitics and geoeconomics, though larger geopolitics is a umbrella term, and geoeconomics and all will come into this one, but geoeconomics cannot assure you that to outweigh geopolitics. Geopolitical, if China, does it want territory from us? Does it want to take on Arunachal Pradesh? In this century, China cannot take Arunachal Pradesh. This is a very tough war, and Chinese understand it. So all these renaming 62, all the places are fine as a geopolitical pressure. But it is not that the Chinese don't understand. They're a pragmatic nation. They will understand that a war, there is no guarantee of who will win, and wars are so messy that you can't guarantee how the wars will take their course. Ukraine is fighting Russia, superpower. Americans fought Taliban, Afghanistan, to remove Taliban, and left when Taliban came back into force. Americans fought Vietnam, and they won every battle but lost the war. The fact I'm saying is that economic interdependence, and why I bring this issue is that we have a 130 $140 billion trade with China. It can be said that because the trade is there and it is largely beneficial to China, there will be no war. I think we will be pushing ourselves into a cul-de-sac in case we start thinking that there is an economic interdependence. Two countries having McDonald's don't fight wars. No logic to it. It's a statement of fact people have spoken. Well, countries have fought war. India had McDonald's, so had Pakistan McDonald's. So we fought a war. No two democracies fight a war. Democracies have fought war. Argentina and UK. The fact is, all these things, that there is a economic interdependence which will protect us from a war with China, will cause us grievous damage, because despite the economic interdependence, the Chinese came and did what they did in May 2020. I mean, we could have done. And now, in this globalized world, you just cannot get out of the supply chains. You can buy anything from anywhere. Its manufacturing could still be taking place in China. You can buy from Indonesia. It could still have China, or the Bangladesh. It could still have a conduit across supply chains which come from China. So economic interdependence is important, and it can assist, but it is not the end all. It will not
Yeah.
overtake geopolitics.
Yeah, that means economic interdependence gives you a leeway in a post-war scenario to come to some accommodation, but it doesn't stop the war from happening, nor does it mitigate the risk of war from happening. On that, there's no doubt. I think that's very well explained, sir. Right. The next thing which you make is peace based on agreements is fragile and illusory. And you have, yeah, and I think that's a very, 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 erudite observation. No agreements have, in the history of the world have survived and led to peace, or held together to hold peace. Yeah, you're
So
all yours.
So the Minsk one and Minsk two between Ukraine and Russia, which were underwritten by the Western powers, actually were non-starters from the time Minsk one and Minsk two was signed in 1415. So the fact is, if the reliance was on Minsk one and Minsk two, well, the war has proven that it did not have any kind of reliability. And the war started in 2014, and Donbass, between the local forces in Donbass and the Ukrainians, when the Minsk one and Minsk two were being signed. Our case, we signed 93, 96, 2005, 2012, 2013, all agreements. Even 2013 agreement was signed in September, October, when the Chinese had already done a 22-day, caused a problem in Depsang Bulge in the month of
Yeah.
April in 2013. So, and the agreements were very fine documents, superlative documents on peace and tranquility, and how war should not take place, and how should you disengage when you meet either forces. What happened to all these agreements? And despite the agreements of 2013, Subsequently, there are large number of meetings taken place at the principals level, large number of meetings taken place at the level of armed forces and the bureaucracy. Even after 2020, we have 15 WMCC meetings. 15 WMCC meetings. We have had 21 rounds, as you're aware, of the core commanders talks.
Yep.
Each one had come out with some kind of a readout, some kind of signed documents. But it is not resolved issues here. If you sign a treaty, well, that does not guarantee anything at all. I'm also saying that we exchange with Pakistan 1st of January our nuclear details. This is part of a
Yeah.
CBM which has been existing for a very long time. I think 30-40 years. Does that guarantee us that Pakistanis will not use force even against the nuclear establishments when something goes wrong? They keep talking about nuclear every drop of a hat. They say for the conventional superiority of India, we reserve the right to use counter force or counter value. What does that mean? They mean that we will use nuclear power. It is not that they will use it or they will not use it. They are saying so. They are addressing it to the political hierarchy and the military hierarchy that they will use it. So, what the logic of the argument I made is that agreements and CBMs are fine, and we must work to the end that they exist. But you excessively rely on this one, then 2020 can happen. Or Kargil happened. If you recollect, you and me when in serving times, when the bus journey took place to Lahore in
Yeah.
February
When that
1950.
was happening, the intrusion was taking place.
Exactly. So, and,
Yeah.
and
Those
bus
are,
Germany and the Prime Minister went and laid a wreath at the Minare Pakistan in Lahore, which actually said that, okay, we recognize Pakistan as an entity. Yeah, we have no interest. You run your own country. Despite that, the Musharraf was already occupying the heights of Kargil war,
sure.
and we signed a very fine agreement in Lahore. All this, and it is also meant for you and me that agreements are fine. We must follow them, but don't take them that the agreements will allow you permanent peace. No.
In fact, I put it the other way around, sir. Agreements are fine; they buy you temporary peace, but agreements also give space for the next war. If you see, every agreement has given space for the next war because after some time, the agreement is dissected, and in that dissection comes out the space for the next conflict, and that is what I think both Pakistan and China have mastered that, and somehow we have been a we have been always relying that the agreements will buy us peace, and that's a great lesson. There's no doubt about it. Okay, the unthinkable. 20th century conventional warfare is equally possible in the 21st century, even with modern technology. Yeah, I think that's again a very, very, very important lesson which you brought out. That in the last century, when we were, majors and lieutenant colonels, we thought long wars are gone, bloodshed is over. The new century was a, short war and winning without fighting and things like that. But that's changed completely, and I would like you to elucidate that.
So you rightly pointed out, see, in any which way, if you take a Second World War, First World War is being fought across in Ukraine between Ukrainians and Russians today. It is as First World War as any war can be. It's trenches. There are tiers of trenches. There are minefields. The movement in 1 year of 2023, only 0.01% of territory changed hands between Russians and Ukrainians, while thousands got killed. एक साल में टेरिटरी तो बदली नहीं है. एक छोटा सा गांव ले लिया, एक छोटा गांव दे दिया. Territory is not changed largely, but you see what has happened. Thousands have got killed. The point is, it's as First World War as First World War can be. But then there are hypersonic missiles been used. Then 23 ships of the Russians were downed and sunk in Black Sea against Ukrainian by Ukrainians who don't have a navy. Houthis are doing what can we call a sea denial across the Red Sea without having a navy. These are these are totally different wars. So there are many wars fought in together. If you say urban warfare, you can go back to how Napoleon fought in urban warfare, or even earlier. But you see urban warfare in Fallujah, in Mosul, in Georgia, and of
Georgia.
course now, and Gaza now. It is as urban warfare, street to street, house to house, as can be, as has been fought over 2 3 centuries. Which type of war? We say it's technology, HIMARS, ACTMS, space warfare, quantum, all are important, everything. But there is a battlefield singularity. And battlefield singularity implies that it is not that you will fight kinetic, non-kinetic, contact, non-kinetic, non-contact, gray zone, hybrid, space, cyber, or trench. All will be fought. There is, you know, thank God you and me are retired at the right time. We are not fighting all types of war. But you can imagine the present generation has to fight a three-man trench, which I thought 10 years ago, yeah, it is redundant, three-man trench and bunkers. Let's get on to different warfare. But I finish by saying there is a maneuver warfare, and maneuver warfare turns out inevitably to an attritional warfare. And attritional warfare goes back into old time. So we may be saying latest type of warfare to the oldest type of warfare. We need to prepare for the entire gamut of affairs.
Yeah, I think there is another important point which you have made, and it's coming. You got to talk of a lot of warfare happening over static battlefields. You might, after all, at the end of 4 years of conflict with China, you have only two friction points, and those friction points are all about 3 to 4 kilometers up and down, and largely the rest of the thing has been static. That's a different story of the 3 to 4 kilometers that we can talk. But tomorrow's war also will be something like this, and this is the kind of war will continue. Like you said, no mother's son is going to come and touch any part of Arunachal and take it away. The last time they tried it at Yangtze, they got beaten up badly and went back, right? And so this is about a static battle with a lot of mobility around. I'll sum it up that way, and that's what future war is going to be all about. Okay, then we said wars have unpredictable outcomes. I think that is one of the most important things. Wars are risky by nature. We don't know when you enter it what is the notion of victory. We don't know how we will come out of it. You don't know whether you lost or won. It's like America who declares victory and goes after a loss. And your thoughts on this?
So I agree exactly what you said. There it is. You can't predict it. What happened in Afghanistan? Two superpowers fought there over 40 years. USSR first broke into pieces, and the Americans thereafter. And what is the outcome? It is Taliban, 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 Taliban. It's now, and Taliban, which is the fighting with his father, Pakistan today. What is the outcome? Who is a friend and a foe? Zilch. It doesn't matter at all. The war's outcomes. Somebody says that I have the greatest prowess of cyber kind, or of AI or whatever. None can be guaranteed, because, as you rightly pointed out, the notion of victory has gone away. I would say that if I come out of a war with a reputational face intact, and I have a strategic advantage, not a victory, well, I won the war. The question is, I have to define what is the reputational face that I need to retain. That is, and now, if a country doesn't want attrition, doesn't want body bags, China is hesitant to accept victories, casualties. So they haven't accepted casualties in Vietnam War or Korean War or 62 War, even Galwan. They never accept attrition. Which, what does it imply? That attrition means reputational phase for China. That's the war. The point I'm raising is that there is just no guarantee what outcome will be. anybody who makes an intelligent and analytical guess about how Russian and Ukraine war will finish off is climbing the tree wrong side. Yeah, you can't guarantee. You can't say how. We can't even say how Gaza will finish. Yeah. So which war and which
Yeah,
war is finishing? Yeah.
yeah. Let's take this a little further, sir. In our context, will it be fair to say that we desire limited outcomes of what we're going to do within the overall framework of our military thinking? Will it be fair? I'm not talking of victory. I'm not talking of face saving. I'm not talking of all those things. But say in a context with of Pakistan, as also with China, could we define for ourselves? Might not be able. We might not even put it out in the open domain. But should we get into this? That okay? Let's see what are the victory outcomes we seek in any context or a contest.
So very difficult. Something these questions are pestering my mind also quite a bit as to what is how do you define a victory, because your operations depend on that thought process. Okay, sorry, missed it. Now, first issue is that where is what are the weaknesses of your adversary? When you fight an adversary, you fight on adversary's weaknesses and not on his strong points. If you fight at his strong points, you will break your own teeth before to do that. So you have to actually exemplify what are the weaknesses. Now, when you start counting, Chinese have got he's got PCL 191 artillery, which has got a range of 500 kilometers. 500 kilometers artillery range. Well, it's true or untrue. Exaggerated, you reduce it by 50%. 250 kilometers artillery range is fairly quite all right. So he's got a HIMARS on his own side. We have to find what is his weaknesses and where can we fight it. I can elaborate on it, but some other time we can talk about this one. Similarly, Pakistan, you know, uh, again, very difficult to say that what you and me and you commanded an artillery division in the flank of decision, which they call flank of decision. I'm trying to scratch my head.
Yeah, okay, fine.
I scratch my head on the flank of division. Okay, I say, can we train ourselves to fight in a manner that we were practicing in the flank of decision in the 80s when we started planning it, brass tacks, all that. We
Yeah,
have grown through the same period, or what we did in the exercises in the turn of this century, first 10 years, or the exercise being done today. Is it there is similarity there? Is it possible that there is nothing changed between late 80s and this century? There is where I say that we have to, before buying a pen, think what you're going to write, how you're going to prosecute wars, because we may be capability building without actually conceptualizing from the political hierarchy to the ground as to where you're going to fight a war, where there would be weaknesses that you will exploit and you will do decent amount of success. These are very serious matters, and I can't give you an answers on the TV
yeah.
today.
I completely agree with you, sir. And it comes down to the last point or the first point which we spoke of, the political military fusion, because a lot depends on what happens in that domain of political military fusion. Okay. A strong adversary will seek a short war to avoid protraction and even the likelihood of loss of face. War will remain a test of logistics and industrial capacity. I think that is being played out in Ukraine in a large measure. But how does it transfer to our system and what do we do about it?
So war, look, uh, prolonged wars. You think the Russians like a prolonged war, then the war is continuing? They recruit even today about 30,000 soldiers a month. A month. A fellow who dies gets $90,000 or equivalent in rubles on his death. Any economy can break by this kind of recruitment, this kind of mobilization, and this kind of casualties that can be that help you to sustain. So the fact is that a strong adversary will say, "Let me get on with it and done with it." But then a strong adversary is fighting a stronger adversary, because they are not Russia is not fighting Ukraine. They are fighting
He's fighting USA.
everybody. You
Yeah,
know,
everybody.
look at the exhibition that they have done in Moscow yesterday. They have shown a Brahms tanks and Challenger tanks and a Leopard tanks and all Western equipment picked up and taken like a museum and placed it in for display in Moscow. You know, this is the kind of war. So the point is, while a stronger nation may attempt to be done with it, do convey a message, because a long drawn message will have possibility of reputational risk. Something can go wrong. When a maneuver warfare changes over in time to an attritional warfare, then attritional warfare will cause immense amount of grief to both sides. Where is your resilience of being a superpower and fighting 20 years in Afghanistan for no reason? I mean, historians will say the nation, the war was not fought the right manner. That's the point I'm raising, is that while a stronger nation may have the capacity to fight long wars, it may be detrimental to its reputation to fight long wars as we are transiting into the 21st century, because it knows that there will be more trouble in case the war gets prolonged, because war will turn out to be hybrid, asymmetric. There will be people fighting or from caches and hides, and the whole concept changes. So a stronger nation may say, let's do a war and finish off with it and get on with it. A weaker nation which has lost territory or lost something will say, I'll prolong the war. Doesn't matter it, but I will fight it in a manner that my adversary is not expecting the wars to be fought. That's a logic I was trying to place across here. When
No, I
not exactly it can be true. Yeah.
no, but I think it stands to logic, sir, because you see, if you this very question is being asked in China, and people are asking within China. Look, you went 4 years back to push the Indians back. You gave them away most of the gains you got, and you're just still stuck at two places without a resolution, and you have militarized the whole area. And what have we achieved? This is a question which the Chinese think tanks are today discussing within China. So when people
So
say that, look, China overwhelmed India and we have not been able to respond, I think there's a flip to it over a period of time when China comes under pressure or is doing a rethink on its commitment. I'll give a
so so Jan Shankar,
uh,
1 second here.
okay, sir.
Just 1 second. On issues of China and what's happened on Eastern Ladakh is a subject by itself, and we can debate it at your pleasure anytime.
Uh, yeah, that's a separate things. I'm making the point of the stronger nation would like to finish off earlier. The weaker nation would like to prolong it. If you take it in that parlance, this is what has been this thing. And then the next point, which China is cognizant of, and this is as recent as today. I was doing some reading. Their main strategic direction, as they put it, is Taiwan, and their secondary strategic direction is India. And their biggest worry today is if they go into the main strategic direction, right, is one, of course, how to keep USA out of the equation. The second problem which they have is if there's a chain reaction warfare and if trouble starts on the Indian border, what happens to us? We are caught in a two front war. And hence, they want to finish off Taiwan at the earliest. And Taiwan, for all its logic, will say, no, you come in and we'll keep you here for a long time and open up possibilities. And I'll leave it at that.
I'll have a
I'll
contrary
leave it
view.
at that. No, fine.
I'll
There's no problems.
The other part
Look,
is,
wait. Before you give a counter view, 80% or 90% of what I've said is the Chinese view. I'm not giving you my view. I'm giving you what the Chinese
yeah,
think. So now your view.
Chinese have laid down some ambitions for themselves. 2049, 2035, they are working to ambitions to become a global power. You know, whether they achieve it or not is a secondary, but they have
Listen,
said so. There's a Chinese dream. No nation can grow up to become a superpower if it has inimical neighbors like China has got. Taiwan, Japan, Philippines on one side, and all the South Asian nations, and of course India with a long border. To reach that aim, it has to develop a maritime prowess which is secures itself, or it can move towards a maritime securement on times to come. To do that, it has to put its back, which is Indian border, to rest, to make it
that
benign,
is not. Yeah, yeah. I
to
agree
make
with
it
you.
benign. So if he makes Indian border benign, now it can make it focus. Either it can done by a treaty between China and India. Okay, yeah, we will not do anything. So that makes a border secure. Then he can progress itself towards the first island chain, the second island chain, and Atlantic, and all the other oceans across it. Has Chinese achieved a benign border with India in the course of 2020 to 2024? That's the issue which needs a debate here. If it is
Yeah,
not a benign border, then his energies are sunk into making this border benign, and it cannot put the full energies of becoming a superpower by going across the other oceans. That
yeah.
I
I think you
think is
say.
a,
I think that's what both of us have spoken of. I mean, that's how it is, and that actually amplifies what you have said.
yeah,
On that, I think we are on the same way.
yeah.
Okay, deterrence cannot assure peace. This is something classic. I think we need to talk about it.
So, since very long time, we've been talking about dissuasive deterrence and punitive deterrence, and we have always stated that we have punitive deterrence, and that punitive deterrence did not deny Pakistan with a $8 billion defense budget, $8 billion defense budget to keep us busy in Jammu and Kashmir over last 40 years, and so whatever deterring prowess that we had and the punitive deterrence we had has not assured Pakistan some kind of better relationship with Pakistan, or deterring war. The war, whether it's proxy or war which is conventional, is immaterial. It is causing immense amount of grief and pressure across to Indian nation. So the fact is that punitive deterrence has not exactly succeeded in achieving what we wanted to achieve. Have we able to dissuade um, China? Now, the fact is, Chinese did what Chinese did in 4 years ago. What Chinese are doing continually on all fronts, even if it is in United Nations or Arunachal Pradesh or wherever, they are unmindful of any kind of dissuasiveness that we may have. Historically speaking, we have been talking about deterrence by denial and deterrence by punishment. Now, deterrence by denial is what we are now attempting to create on the northern borders, and it may be successful. I think we have the strength and the capacities to deny to do deterrence by denial. Deterrence by punishment is another issue. What I'm saying is that when we say we have punitive deterrence against Pakistan, does it imply that Pakistan will not poke into Indian affairs? Or when we say we have dissuasive deterrence against China, does it assure us that the Chinese will not take advantage where they can take advantage? Maybe Yangtze, maybe Fishtail, maybe anywhere else.
Anywhere else.
So if our forces, yours and mine, have to remain deployed in a tram line from one end of Karakoram Pass to Kibutu, despite the fact that we have some kind of strong deterrence. Well, that means that our deterrence is not assuring us that there will be no war. We are prepared that minute we relent, an advantage will be taken. And that's the issue. If we are having such strong conventional prowess that we can take Pakistan to task, say, why are we deployed from post to post over 800 kilometers, 750 kilometers from Sangam on line of control right up to AGPL, and then AGPL of 122 kilometers? Because minute we relent, despite the deterrence we have, Pakistan will take advantage and occupy a post. Deterrence is important, but deterrence is not end all to assure you that adversary will not take advantage of it. That's what I
Yeah,
wanted
I
to say.
think no, no, you're right, sir. What you actually outlined is the stability instability paradigm. That deterrence breeds stability at the top and instability at the bottom. In fact, the deterrence that we think, whether it's nuclear deterrence or conventional deterrence, whether it's persuasive or dissuasive, gives adequate space of instability at the bottom to create problems of its own kind. And this is something which we have to understand. The only issue is when there is deterrence at the top and there's stability at the top, the space at the bottom gets reduced. That's the only saving grace. That you might not, the escalation matrix goes to a certain level, and both sides are mindful of the fact that you can't cross a certain level of escalation. And that has been operative either against Pakistan and against,
China.
China. And I think that is a point which we have to
Yeah.
take home, and we have to be conscious of it. Yeah, complacency will be detrimental to national security. And we'll take both the second one also. The lines between peace and war have been blurred into irrelevance. So, your views and why you wrote this.
So, complacency. Now, the fact is that we had the best of intelligence that the Israelis could profess. I mean, they were nothing better than Israeli, the Mossad or Shin Bet or whatever you call it. But they were surprised, and they were surprised like nobody else can be surprised. And they lost 1,250 people. The access through the huge wall came at 14 points. And they had machine guns automatically aimed and ready to fire on it on their own. The point here is that there is something called strategic intelligence. We rely excessively on operational intelligence and tactical intelligence, but when you say strategic intelligence, that's the intelligence of intent, intelligence of capacities. Now, there is where it is most important to actually adjudicate as to what is the intent. Now, intentions can change, but there has to be some kind of a thought process which builds up. You require the analysis of the intent regularly being done and redone and redone to say what does he have and what does the capacities he have. Today, if you and me say that there is Chinese as a threat in being on the Tibet and in Xinjiang. When we say threatened being, it's the forces there, the roads that are building, the dumping
Yeah,
is being
everything is
done,
there.
everything. So we say threatened being. That's a tactical intelligence and operational intelligence. And we are worried about that, so we are prepared. But somebody has to also think at some level about what is the strategy, what is the intent. Is the intent to threaten Arunachal Pradesh or Sikkim or Siliguri corridor or any one of these areas? Now, there is where I think there is a gap here in our thing, and we need to work on strategic intelligence in more ways than one. So, if we are not guaranteed now, there was an article published in ORF, I think, or somewhere in January, February 2020 that the Chinese are doing, have brought divisions down in the areas of Karakoram, and they are training there in that area, which is right close to Exaichen. Now, that's the question is those divisions moved in after 2 months and they were deployed right opposite us. The intent of the decision of those forces would have been decided 6 to 8 months earlier
Yeah,
at
but
the
as per
highest
your
level.
border agreements.
Correct. So the point is, now you and me know that we have suffered tremendously in Kargil. You know, we were we were vacating. The Pakistanis knew that we were vacating those posts from 80s onwards. The Benazir plan initially was 80s. It was implemented in 99. So it took 8 10 years to take a decision to do so. But we were vacating those posts because now today we are sitting there and not vacating those posts because we say we cannot allow to be complacent today. If we say we have done mirror deployment across into the areas of Ladakh, it's because we are removing the issue of complacency totally. We are saying no, there can be no chance taken on this one. We just so you cannot be complacent at all. And I would say it carries across onto any other frontier also. You just
Yes,
cannot be
that,
complacent. Yeah. And
on that there's no
I
doubt
would
that.
say cyber also. I mean, the Chinese with all these equipment across in India. No, you have to be cautious of the fact as to what kind of damage can be done to us. And the second point that you were saying is lines between peace and war. Now, I am not too fond of the jargons that are thrown out from the West of gray and hybrid. Gray means between white and black. But then we've been fighting insurgencies from 50s onwards. That means हम तो पैदा ही ग्रे में हुए थे. हमारा तो कोई वाइट तो है ही नहीं ना. हम तो ग्रे में ही हैं. तो यार ग्रे क्या फर्क पड़ता है यार? If we are fighting internally or externally from last 7 decades, well, we are in gray. So, let's not decide that there is a peace and then there is a war. And in between peace and war, there is economic interaction, there will be trade, then there will be some kind of adversarial economic pressures. Then it transcends itself to small little actions like what happened in Eastern Ladakh, which people say gray zone. I would say it is black as can be is Eastern Ladakh. And then, it kind of comes across to conventional warfare. So you graduate from peace to war. Where is peace? If the Chinese say that we will stop from tomorrow onwards buying any wine from Australia, November 2021, it sunk the entire wine industry of Australia because they making noise of COVID. Or they say all Lotte malls belonging to South Africa, South Korea, in China are sealed from tomorrow. They have some problem. Or they say we don't buy any salmon from Norway because Norwegian Nobel Prize has been given to Mr. Lee. Look at the kind of economic pressures being brought across to countries. We haven't felt it. Is it war or is it peace? It's an economic war. And the economic war, Chinese are masters in it. There are so many. They said, okay, Nike and H&M said we can't use the cotton produced by people in
Shenzhen.
Xinjiang because, and so they said all Nike and H&M malls closed in China. You can imagine the kind of economic warfare, which is a war which causes immense amount of strain into the country. No barley can be taken in from Australia. The Australian coal ships were lying for a year plus in Shanghai harbor, not being allowed to download and couldn't even go back. This is war. This is war in peace. Now, to differentiate, I find the issue of the word war and word peace very difficult to define. I read on these issues. I find it Quincy Wright has written about all these and so many others. The fact is, it is today's world. Are we at war? Yes. If so much of large quantum of force is deployed on the northern borders, which was not deployed 4 years ago, it is war. It's
No, there's
not
no
peace.
doubt. No, I have no doubt about it. In fact, I have absolutely no doubt about it. We are not going there and sitting across each other to say hello, hello. And you don't put 50,000 people across and at
And
14,000
more.
and more and say, okay, we are not at war. We are at war. It's only that it's a cold war. And I've already done a program to say that India is at cold war with China. people, that's a different story. We are in Cold War. In fact, that's
Yeah.
the whole thing. I think so. So we have covered the whole ground, and I think there's a final. I mean, great discussion we've had. Your final comments before I take a couple of questions only.
So my final comment is the first issue that we spoke. We need to create the fusion today. And I'm sure the government will be amenable. We just have to say that this is how we want to prosecute if a war takes place. We don't want a war, and we will work to end to deter a war. But if the war takes place, this is how we will prosecute it. And to prosecute that war, we require these capabilities, and this capabilities implies that we require A, B, C, and D. Now, in prioritization, because there is something called desirables and something called possibles. So we may desire to have another 2,000 tanks, but is it a possible thing? Or we may want to have the entire infantry having something. These are desirables, but they're not possible. Now, if we have to work within a pocket, then we have to actually do the capability matrix with intense amount of detail, based on our operational plans, based on how we are going to prosecute a war, dependent on the power of the adversary and how the adversary will prosecute wars. It starts, and therein where it comes in, the political hierarchy which says, okay, you will be able to prosecute a war in scenario A, B, C, D up to this extent. It's a whole vicious cycle. It's not a question of making 155ization of artillery.
No,
It is
no, that
it,
is
it is
you have to
one.
start with a. You have to probably start with a national security document or a national security policy, whatever you call it,
Yeah.
which we don't have. And I think we'll get back to this after the elections are over, so that whatever we discuss on a panel, we can put it across to the new government, right? But today was just a precursor to the whole story, and I think there's a lot more to go in this whole game. I'll take